What is it actually like on the ground? Some who go never get the opportunity to return, to talk about it. Others are too traumatized to share what they've seen. Well, Neil Shea is a contributing writer with National Geographic magazine, and he spent some time there, and he joins us now from Boston. Hey there, Neil. How are you? I want to get your perspective. We've been talking about this subject all day long as we head into the 10th year today. You spent time there. Paint us a picture, kind of give us the personal view of your experience, both with the civilians that live in Afghanistan and with some of the troops that you spent time with.
Well, I think that both groups are sort of waiting to see what the U.S. government will do. And while I was there, they were really bringing out the message, Obama's message, to the Afghan people. The American troops are literally walking it into the villages and letting people know that the U.S. wasn't going to be there for too much longer, and that it was time for the Afghans to step up and start taking more responsibility for the war and their own security. So you have the Americans trying to deliver this message and the Afghans really trying to understand what it means for them. So it was a very confusing time.
And I'm wondering, you were embedded, I think. Did you get a sense that everyone was on the same page when it comes to the mission, what they were doing there?
In the regions that I was in, most of the people seemed to be. I was in the eastern part, very close to the Pakistani border, and there was solid coordination between the different infantry units, at least in terms of what the idea was. But I don't think that that holds across the entire country because there are so many different types of units doing different jobs. You have infrastructure building along the Pakistani border, and then you have drug interdiction down in the south and in the north. So it's really a mixed signal across the country.
I think it's so interesting. So you actually spent time with some of these people going around the villages saying, hey, we're going to be leaving soon. And you said that was sort of a hard message for the Afghan people to digest. What was the reaction, both of the civilians, the regular people just living there, and also of the people who were going to sort of have to start taking on these roles or are supposed to be taking on these roles in Afghanistan?
Well, I think that the Afghans really couldn't understand the message very well, because the translation is pretty bad between the Americans and the Afghans in many cases. But I think that the Afghans were really sort of shocked in a way because they couldn't really imagine that the Americans would ever leave. If you've been there and you've seen these enormous bases with all of the American military equipment, it's hard to imagine that stuff ever really leaving. And so there was, some of them wanted the Americans to leave, but they really couldn't believe that the Americans would actually follow through with it. So there was a lot of disbelief and shock on both sides.
Neil, you're a journalist with National Geographic. I'm curious what you think about the way this war is being portrayed, the message, the perception, in terms of the media. That's, what's being reported and coming back to the United States, and also the perception in Afghanistan.
Well, in Afghanistan, it's a completely different animal altogether. The people there, the average person living out in a small village in the mountains, has very little access to news or to a larger story of even how their village fits into this nation that the NATO forces are trying to build. So that's almost too difficult to talk about in comparison to the U.S. In the U.S., I think that there's plenty of news. There are a lot of journalists over there doing a lot of good work. And there are so many outlets back here in the States where you can go and find any number of stories every day. I think, though, what we're starting to see and have been seeing for a long time now is that the American population is not, they're war weary. They don't want to read about this stuff or see it on the news anymore. So no matter, even though we're at an apex of information coming out of Afghanistan, the people back here, they were tired a long time ago about listening to it.
Now, the Obama administration, leaders here in the U.S. have talked about and have stuck to this idea of a July 2011 deadline in terms of starting to bring troops home. That date is starting to, I've spent some time at Foreign Relations hearing, there's a lot of people, experts coming to say this is unrealistic. However, what's your take? July 2011, December 2011, what's going to happen when the troops start to leave?
Well, I think that one of the articles that I read today was Obama was talking about how this deadline doesn't necessarily mean anything. That was what I read in between in the lines of his statement. He was saying that it's just going to be the beginning of a troop drawdown. Now, they could just remove 1,000 troops, a battalion, whatever they want from Afghanistan on that deadline, and then they can say that they started to meet their goal. It doesn't mean that a lot of troops are going to be leaving Afghanistan rapidly. So we really don't have any idea what the administration plans on doing in July. We just know that that's the deadline that they set to do something. I think that American troops will likely be in Afghanistan a lot longer. And if we want to do any of the things that we claim we do as a nation over there, we're going to have to spend a lot more time.
Certainly a tough thing to think about. Neil Shea, contributing writer with National Geographic magazine.